Hi, my name is Audrey. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, also known as the Mormon Church, and I don't believe it anymore. And I do have a TikTok, Audrey Kitty _ if you want to check me out there. I've got a bunch of videos about the things with the church that have led me to not believe it anymore. But I wanted to make a video here on YouTube to be able to longer and in more detail explain how I came about to the conclusion that the church is not true. Now, my journey actually starts from a very young age. When I was a kid, I didn't really see any difference between boys and girls, men and women. I knew that I was a girl because people told me that, and I wanted to have short hair because it's easier to manage, but my mom's like, your long hair is so nice, and whatever. But from a very young age, I knew that there were certain standards or certain things that girls were expected to do and that boys were expected to do or not do. So that did not start affecting me until I had to go to the Wednesday night activities at church for the youth. And I can't remember what it was called back then. Maybe activity days, not sure. But once I started attending that, and then shortly after that, I was 12 years old. And when you're 12, you go to, you separate the genders. So girls are in a separate class, boys are in a separate class. So now I was in the young women's class. And I was basically indoctrinated every Sunday and every Wednesday night about how my role as a woman is to get married and have children. That's it. That I was just meant to be a good wife and be a good mother, that I need to support the priesthood and all that you can imagine. Now, going backwards in time to when I was 8 years old getting baptized, I was very excited about getting baptized because when you're a kid in the kids' classes, that's the thing that's made the biggest deal before you're 8 years old is getting baptized. And as a kid, there are songs that you sing in church. So like for our class, we would have singing time at the first part, and then the second part would be a lesson. The songs, there are ones that are extremely repetitive, like Follow the Prophet, where you literally say follow the prophet, over and over again. Which, now in retrospect, thinking about it, like that's complete brainwashing and indoctrination there. But there's, other ones about one called When I Am Baptized, which is all about getting baptized. My favorite song as a kid was I Love to See the Temple. So that one was basically indoctrinating you into believing that your family can be together forever, but only because of the temple. And that is basically I would say with the Mormon Church, the temple is the main thing about the church. Like if I had to pick one thing that makes it unique from all others, it's the temple, which you get certain ordinances that allow you to be able to be sealed as a family for all time and eternity, meaning after death, you are still on paper in the next life as husband, wife, mother, son, genealogy, all that. Now, so back to me being a kid, I don't know why, but I have this memory of sitting in church and looking at the people passing the sacrament, which, it was always men or young men And the bishopric is always men because women can't have the priesthood, so they can't have those priesthood roles, leadership roles. But me being a little kid, like before I was 8 years old, way before that, I turned to my mom and I said, I can't wait till I'm 12 so that I can pass the sacrament. And my mom says, well, honey, you can't pass the sacrament. Only men who can pass the sacrament because men get the priesthood. And I did not understand that at all. It didn't click in my mind. I'm not sure at what point I fully understood it, but it was definitely something that I had to learn because it just didn't make sense to me. I never, as I said before, I never saw a difference between men and women. Like you had a mom and a dad, but to me, I never thought about having kids. I never thought about getting married. It wasn't a priority for me. And I could say because I hadn't been indoctrinated well enough yet on that, because that indoctrination doesn't really start until you're 12 and the genders separate. But I've just been thinking about that lately, specifically how I just seem to be different as a kid. Or it's that kids innately, don't see these gender roles, that gender roles are not real. And that's what I'm more inclined to believe, is that gender roles are actually not real and that it's something you have to learn. You have to be indoctrinated in. So now, moving back to me being 12 years old, I had been taught by my parents before becoming 12, so maybe at around age 10 is when my parents started having, because in our church we believe in having on Wednesday night is family home evening where the parents are supposed to teach the children about the church. So there are 3 days in the week that you're being indoctrinated. And so I knew more about gender roles, and by the time I was 10, I was very well versed in what a woman is according to society and what she looks like. So I was very self-conscious about people, like if someone were to make a joke and be like, oh, like that's a boy thing, and I'd be like, I'm not a boy. Because that's how hard I had been indoctrinated to where I literally was like upset about people confusing my gender, but only because it was just being so hard-headed, not literally beat into my head, but sort of like that. And definitely by the time I was 12 years old and in the women's class, oh man, that's when the uncomfortableness set in. And what I mean by that is me being uncomfortable in my own skin, because you're taught, and in most Christian religions, women specifically are taught that your dress, the way that you dress, the amount of your body that you show is what is responsible for a man or a boy, a guy, sinning and treating you badly. And I mean, that made me become so uncomfortable in my own body. And I had never been uncomfortable in my own body before that. I never cared about what I wore. I should get the pictures, but there's pictures of me. My mom let us, me and my brother, choose our own outfits. And oh my goodness, I I remember this one picture, I believe I had this, it was sort of like a purpley tie-dye with sea creatures that we got from Florida. And then I had a pair of shorts that were like botanical kind of floral. So just very, I was just like, I love these shorts. I want to wear these today. I love this shirt. I'm going to wear that today. I didn't care if it matched or anything. So I love looking at those old pictures, but I didn't actually wear shorts or pants often as a kid due to how when I was growing, my legs were always very, very long and my waist was small. So the comparison of the long legs and the small waist, like that difference, made it so that pants that fit my waist were too short. And the pants that would be long enough, I would have to wear a belt, but I hated the way that that felt, so I just refused to wear it and would just put a dress on instead. And it wasn't until I was around 10 or 11 when my mom started pointing it out. She's like, you need to be like careful, like don't climb trees, don't do this, don't do that, because the other kids are gonna see your underpants. And like, I never cared about that before. No one ever said anything because kids don't give a shit. You're just playing, and climbing trees was my favorite thing to do. Literally climbing anything. I was a climber. I liked to make obstacle courses and do that, like pretending like it's the military training. I loved monkey bars, like anything to do with climbing. That was my favorite thing. If I could climb onto the roof, I would do it. And I, eventually figured out how to do it. And that freaked out my parents. They were like, don't do that. But did it anyways. So, getting into Young Women's made me become depressed because you're constantly told that there are these high standards that you have to live by or you are sinning, and that the only thing you are going to amount to is just being a wife and a mother. And I did not want kids. When I was in the first grade, I remember telling the teacher, she was asking us all, the girls, how many kids do you want to have? And I said, I don't want to have any kids. I want to have a successful career. I didn't say it in those words, but I explained at that time I was obsessed with Superman and I wanted to be a reporter just like Superman. And, in those comics, he's not married. Maybe not till later, but the stuff that I had, he was not married. And I mean, as a kid, I never thought about that. Like, I didn't want to be married to someone. I just wanted to live. I wanted to live. I wanted to have a successful career. I wanted to go traveling and climb lots of stuff. Oh, goodness. Yeah. So, of course, the teacher, and this is in the 90s. Ooh. Yeah, this is the 90s, mid to early 90s. So the time period was still very conservative. And that encounter with that teacher made me realize, well, maybe I should just tell people a number of how many kids I want just to get them to leave me alone, because I did not like where the conversation was going. Like, she just wouldn't stop on, no, what will your husband think? Everybody has kids, blah, blah, blah. It's what Jesus wants you to do. And, I just had the mindset, just leave me alone. Stop. Like, what do I have to do in order to get you to stop talking to me about this and stop trying to get me to give you an answer that is untrue? So I finally just decided I'm going to tell people I want 2 sets of twins, 2 girls, 2 boys. And I didn't decide it then. It was over time that that's what I decided to tell people. And of course, that solved the problem of people arguing with me about the no kids thing. Now, the weird thing with that is that once I was in Young Women's at age 12 in church, since it's indoctrinated in you every Sunday, every Wednesday night, because I had to go to Wednesday night activity, and then also family home evening. And then also mini lesson in the car on the way home or at home when the parents ask us, what did you learn today? And we had to give a detailed enough explanation of what we learned. So, yeah, also we had family scripture time actually every day. But that was just reading scriptures, but it could lead to a discussion. So, I mean, it was a lot, and I had to make it believable that I wanted to have kids. But because I started to become depressed about how I had to just conform to all these strict rules and such, because at 12, my mom said I couldn't wear sleeveless shirts anymore, and I couldn't wear short shorts anymore. Also, wearing a bra sucked, because, your nipple's not supposed to be showing. Yeah, so having to worry about all of that and having it being pushed so hard. And like if in my family situation, if you expressed any disapproval, disdain, dislike of the rules, you were lectured, very strongly lectured too. And my parents would keep asking, like, so you see how we're right and you're wrong. And I mean, we would end up being punished if we kept saying that we don't like it. We just had to agree or we would be punished. So I eventually forgot, 100% forgot that I did not want to have kids. It wasn't until I moved out of my parents' house at age like 25, 26 that I started to finally remember that I don't want to have kids. And it's just crazy to think about that, because oh my gosh. It's just so weird. Anyways, I realized that there was a lot of things that I was indoctrinated into, the whole modesty thing. I was very uncomfortable with, just being in my own skin, because if my boobs are showing too much, oh, well, and as a woman is growing in her teen years, the boobs get bigger. And there were clothes that I had to get rid of eventually because my boobs were too showy in them. Also, I lived in South Louisiana where it's hot as Hades. And everybody who was members of the church would layer, like if they would wear a tank top and then a t-shirt underneath it. Or sleeveless dresses with a t-shirt underneath it. And oh my gosh, I mean, it's hot. I never understood the people that did that. And whenever the layering became a trend, that's the only time I was comfortable doing that. But I never saw the point of buying immodest clothes if I can't wear it by itself when it's hot. Because I mean, when it's hot, you don't want to be wearing extra clothes. It just makes it hotter. And especially when you've got boobs, you're wearing a bra, which makes it so it's like 3 layers here. It's sweating. It's hot. Super annoying. And then just the way the amount of pressure put on women to dress appropriately is so huge in the church. When I was in Young Women's, we had a box of giant extra large t-shirts, big, huge wraparound skirt things that were to the floor, and jackets, like the little cover-ups. And it was basically various items of clothing to cover up yourself if the teacher decided that your outfit was too immodest. And I have this funny memory, but of this, there were these rich people, like the richest people of our congregation. One of their kids, like they were always pushing the line of modesty, and so one time, well, one of the kids, she was wearing, it was like barely there sleeves, and the teacher was like, you're wearing an immodest dress, so guess what? Here's a giant ass t-shirt to put on top of it. And she was so embarrassed. Everybody's embarrassed when the teacher says that you're wearing something immodest and you have to put this on. I mean, I was scared that she would say that to me, so I made sure that I always had a jacket and that my skirts were always at or below the knee, because I did not want for any reason to be called out like that. I mean, that's super embarrassing. And like, you're just self-conscious all the time. Now, not only was I self-conscious about that, but with my depression, I was like, it officially set in around 13, 14. With the depression was extremely debilitating anxiety. The anxiety was so bad that I literally could not make decisions for myself because I had so much anxiety that I would make the wrong decision. So that caused me to develop an obsessive compulsive picking disorder, picking of my skin. So I always had multiple open sores on my back and shoulders because that's where I would pick at. And so due to that, I didn't want anybody to see that, because when people see the scabs, they're like, oh, you have acne or whatever. And I would just lie and be like, yeah, people would suggest soap or whatever. But no, it was because I pick at my skin till it bleeds, and I would have like 20 bleeding spots on my back and shoulders. And that was constant until recently, and I'm 33 years old. So yeah, like when you develop depression and anxiety from anything, it's not something that can just go away. It takes forever. And the only reason why I am doing so well now is because I get my fingernails done in a way that it's rounded, so that when I do pick, it's not breaking the skin most of the time. So yeah, there's that. So because of that, the sores that I'd have on my back and shoulders, I was uncomfortable wearing swimsuits. So I would always wear a t-shirt on top of my swimsuit. Everybody thought, oh, I was just being extra modest and extra good Mormon girl. No, I didn't want you to see my destroyed back and shoulders because of how much anxiety I had from all of this indoctrination and all of the from my parents, the amount of lecturing and, emotional trauma and all that. So yeah, due to my anxiety about people seeing my back and shoulders, that ended up getting, when you have depression and anxiety, like that changes your brain and rewires your brain. So that caused me to forget that I didn't want kids. It made me think that my wanting two sets of twins was real. So I brainwashed myself into believing that. I brainwashed myself into believing that I want to dress modestly, because when I was like 10, 11, 12 years old, I remember thinking to myself and writing in my journals that when I'm 18 and I can move out of the house, I'm going to wear bikinis and thongs and dress in anything that I want. I'm going to drink alcohol. I'm going to do what I want, because I did not like the church. I did not believe in the church. I believed in the idea of the temple being sealed and being forever families, but I just didn't believe that it was necessary for me to live by the strict rules. If you're not Mormon, we don't drink, and the prophets and church leaders up high, they say that for women, you're not supposed to wear bikinis. You're supposed to wear a modest swimsuit. Yeah, it doesn't matter what underwear you wear, but my mom was very disapproving of of thongs and G-strings. And with my mom, anything that she doesn't like, you need to not like it either. And if you don't, then she goes off on a lecture about why you're wrong for not agreeing with her opinion. She probably doesn't think that she does this, but yeah, you do. So yeah, by the time I was 16 years old, 17 years old, I was suicidal because I, just all that pressure, all at home and at church, was too much. I just didn't think there was any reason to live. And the only hope that I had was getting married to a knight in shining armor. That was the only hope that I had, because it was indoctrinated in me that is my life goal, to get married and to have kids, specifically to get married in the temple and have kids. Not having kids in the temple. But so, yeah, I feel like I've said but so a lot. Somehow I survived. I really don't understand how, because when I told my parents I was suicidal, my mom was furiously angry with me and said that I was breaking the 10 commandments, specifically the one, honor your father and mother. She's like, you're breaking this commandment by being depressed and suicidal, and saying that they weren't listening to me, weren't acknowledging me, various other things that I wrote about, why I'm upset. And my mom's like, you're disrespecting me by being depressed and telling me that you're depressed. Oh my gosh, a huge can of worms we could get into about that. I remember literally in that moment thinking to myself, wow, here I am pitying you, because that's the most gross and disgusting thing anyone could say to a person who says they want to not live anymore. So somehow I survived. Somehow. And I ended up going online and finding what I thought was a good Mormon guy to get married to. Turns out he was a completely abusive person, liar, and that marriage ended almost 2 years, before 2 years. And so now I had a whole bunch of new trauma from that. And I was terrified of men for a long time. And the man that I'm married to now, oh my gosh, I love him to bits. But the friend that I had at the time, my best friend, I was like, oh, man, I really want to date, but I'm just too nervous about dating strange men that I don't know. Because I didn't know anybody except my brother and my dad because I was too scared to get to know anyone. So we did a double date and had chaperoned dates as well with my friend so that I could feel comfortable. And she told him, who's my now husband, she told him about my situation, and she said that he seemed very understanding, not having any idea what I've been through or being able to empathize, but, just going along with how things need to go for me to feel comfortable. And now we are married, been married for 6 years, and it's been absolute bliss. Like, oh my gosh, I never thought I could be this happy. But of course, now that I'm happy, I'm in a healthy relationship. I moved out, interestingly, a few months before going on dates with him. And then we were married as per usual with the Mormon faith. We were married a few months after we started dating. Hold up. March, April, May, June, July, 5 months. That's more than a few, but I mean, for a normal type of situation, that's, pretty quick. So yeah, but it's great. It's great. Alrighty, so it wasn't until I moved out of my parents' house that I was able to really think for myself and start to see the patterns of emotional abuse and control that my parents had been indoctrinated into doing by the Mormon Church. Because the Mormon Church teaches that you need to teach your children in a specific way about the church and about life and how you're supposed to live, think, how you're supposed to dress, date, and treat people. So, yes, I definitely blame the church for a lot of the abuse that happens, because that's how you're taught to do it. That's how you're taught to raise your kids. You're taught that you are the absolute authority, that your kids need to listen to you. And when you're a kid growing up in the church, you're taught that your parents are the absolute authority and that you need to listen to them. You honor your father and your mother. You disrespect them by not listening to them. You disrespect your parents by not doing what they say. Completely bonkers, right? You're not supposed to think for yourself at all. You're just supposed to let your parents tell you what to do. And then for women, when you get married, literally you're taught that you honor they don't say honor, but because he's the priesthood holder of the home, he is the ultimate authority on what religious practices and things that you need to do in the home, or like for major events like moving. Like if he says that the Holy Spirit has told him that you need to move across the country for this new job, the woman is supposed to just believe that that's, God has spoken to the husband and that's what you're supposed to do. Because I think I'm remembering now, the way that it is the woman hearkens unto their husband as the husband hearkens unto the Lord. So it's like that umbrella diagram, if you've ever seen that. So yeah, it's all about authority and the chain of authority, who you listen to. So that also, now that I think about it, that contributed to my anxiety as well, and not being able to make decisions, because I was taught that I don't make decisions for myself, that the Lord tells the prophet what rules we need to follow, what things we need to believe, And the priesthood authorities teach that. And also, I mean, this isn't taught, but it's inherent when you see what's going on. Everybody in the church is judging each other. And if you are not doing something in line with the way you're supposed to, people talk about it. And if it gets to the bishop, or if someone tells the bishop, then he's going to have a meeting with you to discuss concerns about your worthiness. Yeah, I mean, so cringy, so controlling. Ugh. Ugh. I literally get the heebie-jeebies just talking about this, thinking about it. But yeah, so that's all of that. I think I did forget to mention when you're 13 years old or 14, you are the age to go to seminary, which is the sort of like the Bible or church studies class for Mormonism. If you live in an area that has a higher population of Mormons, then you're probably able to have a class near your school where you can actually take, like the school will allow you to have a period off where you can go to that class, because you can't have religion classes on public schools. So yeah, but since in the South of Louisiana, it's less than 1% of the population that's Mormon, so we have to have it in our homes before school. So it's called early morning seminary. We had it at my house. I was the only student for 2 years because the closest other members that were in seminary age did not live close enough to where we lived in order for it to be timely to be able to meet up, have a lesson, and then go to school. So that's when I learned about polygamy, which was the biggest heartache of my life until I finally realized that I had to literally just ignore it, stop thinking about it, because it made me depressed and sad. So I learned about how Joseph Smith, the founder of the church, is married to, and oh my goodness, this is like 40 women? It's like a giantly stupid number. And when I was taught it was taught that he did not want to do it at first. That he saw in the scriptures that there were times when prophets had multiple wives, that he prayed to God asking why were they allowed to do it then and we're not allowed to do it now. And the answer was, oh, well, now you have to do it. Ding-a-ding. And he's like, but I don't want to do that. That's going to hurt my wife, Emma. She's not going to like it. And not so much of a newsflash, she did not approve. Apparently, God said that the law is that the first wife has to approve in order for the husband to get any other wives. Now, of course, Emma says no. No, you hoe. We ain't doing that. It's disgusting. And Joseph is, the way that it was taught to me is that Joseph was relieved that she said no because he didn't want to do it. But then an angel comes with a flaming sword saying, no, you have to do this despite the rule that we said earlier. So now here's a new rule. If your wife says no, she's actually breaking the commandment. Or commandments, like she's disobeying the Lord. I mean, you're probably thinking the same thing as me, that this is nuts. Like, God doesn't change his laws, especially not one after the other. Like, if circumstances if circumstances don't play out the way you think it would, that, oh, we'll just change the rules and then it will go the way you want. No, there's no way that was God. No way whatsoever. So now the way that it was taught to me is that Joseph Smith had to marry multiple wives after that. And I was not taught how many, and I was not taught the ages and the circumstances, because now in the last couple months I've learned that when Joseph Smith started to marry multiple wives, he did not tell Emma he was doing this. She had no idea until after he'd been married to a little over 20 women. She had no freaking clue. None whatsoever. And I believe she found out, I could be wrong though, I believe the way that she found out was because he was having sex with someone in the barn who he had married. And she's like, what the F? What the F is this? And he had to tell her. I could be wrong about that. But she did not know that he had been married to over 20 whammons. That upsets me so much. Like, I've already been upset about polygamy my entire life. Oh, and I forgot the biggest point, is that when I learned about polygamy at age 14, it was taught to my face by my own mother that in heaven, that's the law, that polygamy is the law of heaven, that I will have to accept being married to a man who is also married to other women, and that's just the way that it's going to be. And that is what made me so mad and like literally livid, but I had to keep it to myself because otherwise I would be emotionally traumatized by the onslaught of emotional abuse. So I had to keep it to myself, but keeping it to myself made it just infuriate me more and more until the point where that was actually a point of my depression, was thinking to myself that, in order to be in this church, which I believed was true, I thought that this was the true church, the only true church on earth, and that everything that's taught was the truth. And so, it hurt me deeply to think that this is the true church and I'm gonna have to be married to a dude married to other women. Like, that's the most disgusting and gross thing that I could ever think of having to do. Yeah, so F that. Goodness me, that there's just so much emotional damage, emotional trauma that was released from just that once I finally let my belief of the church go. And I say let it go because, I was hanging on my whole life. I was hanging on to it with, even though thing after thing that I'm finding out that, hurts me fundamentally. Polygamy, the biggest thing. The priesthood was a softer thing because there's so many different opinions about it. That it's a very muddy subject in the church. What I mean by that is that there are, like in your individual congregations, there will be men who preach that women already have the priesthood, they're born with the priesthood, which is what I was taught. But the men they have the authority of the priesthood. So I know it doesn't make sense, but I always believed that men and women have the exact same power, but it was always confusing to me as to why men are the ones on the earth that are the only ones that can use it. So my own personal belief was that both men and women can use the priesthood, but that does not fit in with the concept of polygamy being the law of heaven. Because, if a woman has to be married to if a man has to be married to multiple women, and so that the women can have the righteous priesthood holder, and there's just a whole circle of craziness with it. I'm trying to think if there's anything else with my journey. Oh, well, I haven't got to recently. So the biggest thing is that I finally got on depression medication a year and a half ago, and I realized a couple months into it that I didn't feel the Holy Spirit anymore. And I'll try to make a long story short and then do another video specifically all about all this. But so, I went on a journey of trying to figure out why I can't feel the Holy Spirit anymore. I ended up realizing, well, it must be that I feel it differently. So then I have to define what feeling the Holy Spirit is. Me going on, looking at all church approved, website and sources to figure this out, which led me to just seeing all these inconsistencies that have led me to the point that I'm at now. So next video, I will talk about that.